Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Today, I will be doing my March wrap-up. In March, I read 13 books and DNF'd one book. These books totaled 4,794 pages, with an average of 369 pages per book and 155 pages per day. As always, full reviews for all of the books are either posted already or will be soon. There should be chapters marked so you can easily skip around. The first book I read was Wild and Wicked Things by Francesca May. This is a queer fantasy. The description says, "On Crow Island, people whisper that real magic lurks just below the surface. But magic doesn't interest Annie Mason, not after it stole her future. She's on the island only to settle her late father's estate and, hopefully, reconnect with her long-absent best friend Beatrice, who fled their dreary lives for a more glamorous one. Yet Crow Island is brimming with temptation, and the most mesmerizing may be her enigmatic new neighbor. Mysterious and alluring, Emmeline Delacroix is a figure shadowed by rumors of witchcraft. Soon, Annie is drawn into a glittering, haunted world, a world where the boundaries of wickedness are tested and the cost of illicit magic might be death. To those who are bright and young, to those who are wild and wicked, welcome to Crow Island." This was the DNF. I hated this book. It was an absolute slog trying to get through it. I pressed on to 70% because I wanted to know how it ended and because it is my book club book for April, and I put a bit more pressure on myself to finish book club books. But I was miserable reading it and eventually decided it wasn't worth it. In the book's defense, it's billed as Great Gatsby meets practical magic. I like practical magic, but I can't stand Gatsby, so I wasn't terribly likely to enjoy this to begin with. But it also suffered from two major issues. First, May appears to be allergic to exposition. Most of the time, you hear people complain about exposition dumps or too much exposition, but this has the opposite problem. It is an uphill battle to get even the most basic explanations. This book takes place just after World War I, a fictionalized version in which the Germans had magically enhanced super soldiers that left England, and possibly the rest of the world, with such a distaste for magic that it is pretty much entirely illegal. Lavender is considered contraband, the ban is so strict. But it still took me multiple chapters to determine if anyone knew magic was a thing prior to the war, and even then, I'm only pretty sure the answer is yes. The second problem is horribly unlikable characters. Our primary character, Annie, is mostly just boring, but she's also annoying in that basically everything she says or does goes in circles, whether it's how she feels about magic, how she feels about her friend Bee, or how she feels about Emmeline. Bee isn't a POV character, but she gets enough page time that it isn't unreasonable to call her a main character. She doesn't have a single redeeming quality, as far as I can tell, but it very much seemed I was supposed to care about her and possibly even feel bad for her. I did not. And then Emmeline is a mess, really. She's done something that is going to kill her if she doesn't settle it soon, and she spends a lot of time worrying about it and not telling anyone. She's sort of drawn to Annie, but doesn't want to be, so she spends a lot of time being somewhat abrasive and dismissive toward her. The whole book hinges on me caring about these people and their relationships with each other, and midway through the book I was honestly hoping, though not at all expecting, that the supposed bad guy would kill them all. I'm going to do a spoiler real quick on this one, so those of you who don't like that sort of thing, skip to the next section. I say supposed bad guy because I can't really see him as a bad guy. We're supposed to think he's horrible because he abuses and eventually tries to murder his wife. The problem is that his wife, Bee, along with Emmeline, did a spell to force him to fall in love with her. Beating your wife is bad guy behavior, but beating someone who is essentially enslaved and raped you is not, so I couldn't hate him or wish him ill. Our protagonists, on the other hand, enslaved a man's mind and forced him into a marriage they knew full well he didn't want. So I hate them, and I want them to end badly. Unfortunately, from the very mild scraps of information I could find, it seems that the ending is more practical magic than Gatsby, and they live happily ever after. I don't rate books I don't finish, but I can guarantee if I had finished this one, it would have been a 1. I did not enjoy it, and I do not recommend it. The second book I read was Prince in Disguise by Tavia Lark. This is the second book in the Perilous Court series. It is a queer fantasy romance. The description says, "Sheltered, sickly Prince Bellamy dreams of adventure, but not like this. Captured in enemy territory, his royal identity will get him killed. When his dangerously attractive fellow prisoner asks who he is, Bellamy claims to be a minstrel. Except he can't carry a tune to save his life. He panicked, okay? Rakos was a dragon rider until betrayal landed him in chains. Now he knows 2 things for certain. He can't trust anyone, and he wants his dragon back. When the fragile minstrel asks who he is, Rakos claims he's a farmer. When Bellamy begs for help reaching the border, Rakos refuses. Until he can't resist how much Bellamy needs him. Stormy nights and deadly masquerades forge Rakos and Bellamy's unlikely partnership into something more. Something exhilarating. Rakos treats Bellamy like a person, not a weak, untouchable prince, even as he protects him. But Rakos' enemies are circling in, and that very protection might be Bellamy's undoing. 4 stars. This book is lovely, fluffy fun. The plot is decent, the characters are charming, I enjoyed it. It's not groundbreaking, but it is a good time. The third book I read was Caliban's War by James S. A. Corey. This is the second book in the Expanse series. It is a sci-fi novel. The description says, "On Ganymede, breadbasket of the outer planets, a Martian Marine watches as her platoon is slaughtered by a monstrous super soldier. On Earth, a high-level politician struggles to prevent interplanetary war from reigniting, and on Venus, an alien protomolecule has overrun the planet, wreaking massive mysterious changes and threatening to spread out into the solar system. In the vast wilderness of space, James Holden and the crew of the Rocinante have been keeping the peace for the Outer Planets Alliance. When they agree to help a scientist search war-torn Ganymede for a missing child, the future of humanity rests on whether a single ship can prevent an alien invasion that may have already begun." 4 stars. I liked the show alright until it switched networks, at which point I felt like there was an unpleasant shift in the tone and characters. I'd heard the books were really good and wanted to see if the tone shift was a network problem or came directly from the books. So I read Leviathan Wakes, the first book, last April, and then, for whatever reason, never got around to the next book. I'm trying to pare down my ongoing series as much as possible, so I figured it was time to get through these. I feel like there's not a lot of action in Caliban's War. Like, if I sat down and tried to explain the plot to someone, it would probably sound kind of boring. But the stakes are pretty high, the characters fairly likable and very realistic, and Corey used the perspective shifts to keep anything from dragging too much at any given point. I enjoyed this enough that I was frustrated that I couldn't get the next book from my library for several weeks, but I did immediately put in the hold. I'll be continuing the series as quickly as I can. The fourth book I read was A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. This is a queer Regency romance. The description says, "When Viola Carroll was presumed dead at Waterloo, she took the opportunity to live, at last, as herself. But freedom does not come without a price, and Viola paid for hers with the loss of her wealth, her title, and her closest companion, Justin de Vere, the Duke of Gracewood. Only when their families reconnect years after the war does Viola learn how deep that loss truly was. Shattered without her, Gracewood has retreated so far into grief that Viola barely recognizes her old friend in the lonely, brooding man he has become. As Viola strives to bring Gracewood back to himself, fresh desires give new names to old feelings. Feelings that would have been impossible once, and may be impossible still, but which Viola cannot deny, even if they cost her everything all over again." I gave this book 5 stars initially, but after sitting on it for a while, I think it's probably more like 4. I liked it, but it didn't take up residence in my heart the way a book has to for me to call it 5 stars. As a general rule, romance is a genre about fantasies, and this one leans pretty hard into that aspect. You've got to suspend your disbelief a bit due to the sheer number of people who know or find out Viola is trans and don't even blink. But I think anything more realistic would have been a lousy time. The way the plot unfolds, the way the characters relate to each other, and the relationship between Viola and Gracewood are all quite enjoyable. The only thing I wasn't crazy about in this book was that it spent a lot of time focused on Gracewood's younger sister and her first season, and I didn't feel like that plot had all that much resolution. All the same, I liked it and I would recommend it. Fifth was Remnants of Filth, Volume 3 by Robao Buchiro. This is a queer fantasy romance. The description says, Gumong is determined to turn over a new leaf and prove to Moji that he's not the ruthless man he once was. Yet, as his old memories return, the shadow of the traitorous General Gu seems to haunt him, raising questions to which he has no answers, both about his defection from Changhua and his past entanglements with Moji. As Moji and Gumong struggle toward a fragile truce, the pair are summoned for an emergency rescue mission to an island inhabited by demons. But this island is full of buried secrets, including one that may unravel everything Moji and Gumong thought they knew about the past. 5 stars. I love these books more and more as they progress, and I can't wait for more. I like some emotional turmoil in my romances, and this book delivers in spades. Everyone feels guilty, I'm pretty sure none of them are to blame, and it's a horrible mess. I couldn't be happier. My 6th book in March was Prince and Pawn by Tavia Lark. This is the 3rd book in the Perilous Court series. It is a queer fantasy romance. The description says, Be obedient, be grateful. As the neglected, illegitimate son of a powerful family, Corin is expected to follow his magic-gifted brother to the palace as a servant. He's unwilling but resigned, and allows himself one night of distraction in a stranger's arms. Corin never knew pleasure and pain could be so exhilarating, so comforting. Corin only regrets he'll never again see the anonymous man who ruined him for anyone else. Until the next morning, when Corin meets his brother's new arranged fiancé. Prince Audric doesn't want a loveless political betrothal, but he'll do anything for his kingdom. His last night of freedom is a rare indulgence, and a terrible mistake. Corin is sweet, beautiful, and sees Audric like nobody else does. He's also Audric's fiancé's younger brother. Audric's arranged betrothal might be a relationship in name only, but he can't touch Corin again. Constant proximity hurts when they can't be together, but avoidance is impossible when Corin might be the key to unraveling the conspiracy behind Audric's betrothal, and when Corin keeps fainting into Audric's arms. 4 stars. Again, not a groundbreaking novel, and this one is extremely predictable, but it's a fun and easy read with likable characters. Although it is quite insta-lovey, it's a nice romance. I had a good time with it and would recommend it. At this point, I was just going through the rest of the series, so 7th up was Prince and Bodyguard by Tavia Lark. This is the 4th book in the Perilous Court series. It is a queer fantasy romance. The description says, Vana Dyer can't show weakness if he wants to survive the Draskorin court. The only man he can be vulnerable with is Daromir, Vana's magic-bound bodyguard. The binding lets them share each other's pain, and Vana depends on Daromir's comfort as much as his services as a guard. Vana could never risk their friendship, even as he craves far more than Daromir's loyalty. Daromir Asri sees a side of Vana nobody else sees. Behind closed doors, the cold, elegant prince is kind-hearted, vulnerable. He needs Daromir. If Daromir's devotion sometimes feels like something else, Daromir must be mistaken. His duty comes first, and he'll do anything to protect Vana, including one thing he's never done before. He's keeping a secret. Then their magic bond changes, and suddenly Vana and Daromir don't just share pain anymore. Each shared sensation pushes their friendship to the breaking point, just when Vana and Daromir need each other most. They're facing a mysterious ambassador, a chaos-stirring prince, the consequences of past schemes, and an assassin seeking Bonna's life. 4 stars. I feel like a broken record for this series, but really, they're pretty consistent in their quality and what you can expect to get out of them. They are fun, and I like them. This one was so predictable at points that I didn't understand why the characters themselves didn't see certain things coming, but as long as you don't need a book to be surprising to be enjoyable, that's not really a problem. Then, of course, 8th was Prince and Betrothed by Tavia Lark. This is the 5th book in the Perilous Court series. It is a queer fantasy romance. The description says, Say's power isn't truly his. As a Grail, his role is to serve a mage by augmenting their magic. He's equally nervous and excited about his arranged betrothal. After a life without intimacy, Say will finally fulfill his true purpose as a treasured, valuable Grail. There's only one problem. Say's new betrothed is the legendary Merrick Dyer. The Dragon Rider Prince is powerful, intimidating, and larger than life. Or at least larger than Say. Prince Merrick doesn't want a husband, especially one like this. Say might be captivating, but he's also too delicate and obedient. Merrick vows to break the betrothal, and he refuses to use Say as a Grail, no matter how much Say wants to be used. But Merrick underestimates Say. Wielding kindness as a weapon, Say discovers unexpected tenderness in Merrick, and new fierceness in himself. But being a Grail in power-hungry Dreskora is dangerous, and Merrick still fears 2 things. That someone else might hurt Say, or that Merrick himself will. 4 stars. This book was so low stakes, it's ridiculous. Both guys are immediately attracted to each other, and are supposed to get married. So it feels like there aren't really any barriers to their relationship, aside from Merrick being an idiot. But again, it was fun, and I enjoyed reading it. Then, for my 9th book, I finished off the series with Prince of Agony by Tavia Lark. This is the 6th book in the Perilous Court series. It is a queer fantasy romance. The description says, Prince Kazuya Dyer isn't nice. Being nice lets people close. Letting people close risks revealing Kazuya's greatest secret, the power that condemns him to a lifetime of abuse. Until opportunity appears in the form of a captive enemy mage. Following a dragon across the border lands Lucien Vare in chains, and matters only get worse from there. Lucien has hated House Dyer since the last war. Now he's under the notorious Brat Prince's direct control. Yet beneath Kazuya's vicious mask, Lucien senses desperate vulnerability. Painful experience has taught Kazuya to fear mages. He needs to keep Lucien at a distance even as he uses Lucien's talents. But that distance narrows with each careful kindness, each accidental touch. Lucien acts more like a protector than a prisoner, and Kazuya is tempted by the dangerous sweetness of trust. But Lucien is still a mage, and Kazuya is still broken, and Kazuya's cruel parents may still destroy them both. 4 stars. Pretty much the moment they introduced Kazuya in the 4th book, I wanted to read this one. He's an interesting character with fairly opaque motivations until you get into his head. This book didn't disappoint either. It wasn't terribly predictable, and the romance had more time to bake than in any of the other books. There was, however, one big misstep that Lark made right at the end of this book, and it pissed me off. Not so much that I didn't still enjoy the book, but I really wish that bit could have been written differently. It's super spoilery, so if you want to know what I'm talking about, check out the full review. My 10th book was House of Gold by C.T. Ruizi. This is a sci-fi novel. The description says, A corporate aristocracy descended from Africa rules a colony on a distant planet. Life here is easy for the rarefied and privileged few. The aristocrats enjoy a powerful cybernetic technology that extends their lifespans and ensures their prosperity. Those who serve them suffer under a heavy hand. But within this ruthless society are agents of hope and change. In a secret underwater laboratory, a separatist cult has created a threat to the aristocracy. The Primes are highly intelligent, manipulative products of genetic engineering designed to lead a rebellion. Enabling their mission are the Proxies, the Primes' bodyguards and lifelong companions bound to their service. When the cult's hideout is attacked, proxies Nandipa and Hondo rush to the rescue. As they emerge with their primes onto the surface, however, everything they'd been led to believe about their world is shattered. Nandipa and Hondo will risk it all to honor their oath of absolute loyalty, but when the very people they're tasked to protect turn on each other, the proxies must decide between those they were built to serve and the freedom to carve out their own destinies, and the fate of their planet may rest in their choice. 2 stars. I didn't enjoy this book. The writing was fine, and at points the plot was intriguing, but it had some serious issues. Part of my problem with House of Gold is that there are essentially 4 characters in it, 2 of which kind of fade into the background, and I only liked one of the others. Most of my problem with it, however, is that it's written from the perspective of the 2 proxies, and all of the action seems to be happening with the 2 primes. So we get bits and pieces of the plot, but a lot of it just feels like waiting for the other characters to decide what our POV characters should be doing. I wanted the main characters to be more proactive, so this book just didn't work for me. I wouldn't recommend it personally, but this one very much gives the impression of being a book that just isn't for me, rather than necessarily being a bad book. My 11th read was A Kiss for Luck by Grace Burrows. This is a prequel novella to her Sweetest Kisses series. It's a contemporary romance, the description says. Game designer Sadie Delacourt has moved to the peaceful, bucolic town of Damson Valley for a fresh start where she can keep an eye on a recently divorced sister and her small nephew. Sadie plans to focus on her business and her family until handsome neighbor Gideon Granville turns his focus on Sadie. When Sadie learns where Gideon has been aiming his snooping skills, she's ready to delete him from her plans entirely, though Gideon is all that stands between her and the trouble she thought she'd left behind her. 2 stars. I didn't like this one either. I picked this up because I read at least a dozen Grace Burrows books and loved them, and A Kiss for Luck was available for free. But the other books I've read from her are Regency romances, and this is contemporary, so I've been putting it off a lot. Het adult contemporary romance is just not a genre I reach for often. That wasn't the problem, as far as I can tell. Really, this might have been fine if it was a book rather than a novella. As it stands, the length is just too short to accommodate the story. The result is that everything feels rushed, and the characters have to jump into meaningful conversation too rapidly and with too little development to feel earned or satisfying. It's possible the books in the actual series are good, but I don't plan to read them. Either way, this novella just doesn't work. 12th up was Calling by Molly Harper. This is the 3rd book in the Sorcery and Society series. It is a historical fantasy. The description says, after discovering and rescuing a group of magical changelings just like herself, Sarah Smith must now figure out what to do with the unruly children and how to keep them and the rest of the magical world safe. Having left the structure of Miss Castwell's Institute for the Magical Instruction of Young Ladies behind, Sarah and her 2 best friends, Alicia and Ivy, hide out with the changeling children in the countryside while they try to formulate a plan. They have no weapons, no guidance, and the mother book is gone. They only have each other and the creeping threat of Miss Morton's revenant army on the horizon. New alliances must be forged, and old friends provide what support they can, but the trio wonders who they can truly trust. They are searching for the mysterious artifact that may prove to be the undoing of the undead, after all. As the rest of magical society prepares for what they think is the highlight of Lightborn's endless party season, Sarah, Alicia, and Ivy throw themselves headlong into planning for the night that holds their last chance to protect the safety of the entire magical world. 3 stars. I liked this book. It was fine. It had the same feel as the previous 2, with an interesting setting and likable characters. Mostly I was disappointed by the magic in these books. It wasn't bad, necessarily, but it very much felt like there weren't any rules governing its use. Every spell felt like it was made up on the fly, and was exactly as weak or strong as was necessary to make the plot move. I don't necessarily need to know the rules of a magic system, I'd just like to feel as if they exist. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this book or series, but I wouldn't tell anyone to avoid them either. They're charming, they're just not amazing. My 13th book was Never Meant to Stay by Tricia Doss. This is a contemporary romance/family drama. The description says, Home has always been a temporary arrangement for Samara Mansingh, a wayfaring wedding photographer and the daughter of a diplomat. When her father is uprooted once again, Samara needs a place to stay in Delhi. Next stop, the Khanna family. Samara's memories of the Khannas are vague at best, but she doesn't remember their home feeling so much like a war zone, and the last thing their surly eldest son, Sharav, wants is a house guest eavesdropping on the chaos. Sharav has a melodramatic sister pushing back on an arranged marriage, a withdrawn lead singer brother who won't sing, and a widowed mother hiding her grief in the garden. Sweeping into the household like a tornado, irrepressible Samara is a practically perfect distraction. She has a mind to help a girl find true love, push a young man to find his voice, and bring a lonely and loving widow out of mourning. Maybe Samara can even get on Sharav's ruggedly handsome good side. The only sure thing is that the Khanna family will never be the same again. Neither will Samara, who may finally find what she's been missing her entire life, a home. 3 stars. This book was pretty good. I liked the characters for the most part. I felt like the romance felt a bit rushed. I also felt like the timeline was kind of muddled. I never really had a sense of how long was passing between some of the chapters. I will say, this felt like one of those books where the author is a big fan of food, and people who are also big fans of food will get more out of it. I'm not a big fan of food. I am one of the pickiest eaters on the planet, so it was lost on me. That isn't a complaint, just something worth noting. If you like lavish descriptions of all kinds of foods, this book is more likely to appeal to you than it did to me. Last up was Abaddon's Gate by James S. A. Corey. This is the 3rd novel in the Expanse series. It is a sci-fi book. The description says, For generations, the solar system, Mars, the moon, the asteroid belt, was humanity's great frontier. Until now. The alien artifact working through its program under the clouds of Venus has appeared in Uranus's orbit, where it has built a massive gate that leads to a starless dark. Jim Holden and the crew of the Rocinante are part of a vast flotilla of scientific and military ships going out to examine the artifact. But behind the scenes, a complex plot is unfolding, with the destruction of Holden at its core. As the emissaries of the human race try to find whether the gate is an opportunity or a threat, the greatest danger is the one they brought with them. 4 stars. I started this book pretty much the moment the hold came in. Technically, the quality of this book is completely in line with the previous 2, but I still liked it less. With all of these books, we get chapters from the perspective of James Holden, who I like, so I tend to enjoy those chapters. In each book, we also get chapters from other characters' POV. But these characters are generally introduced in their specific book and then leave the story at the end of it. The reason I liked this book less is that I wasn't crazy about 2 of the 4 POV characters. One of them was fine, it's just that she was a pastor, which meant her chapters involved too much God and religion for my atheist sensibilities. And then the 4th character was largely an antagonist with the dumbest motivations. She was very unlikable, and when Corey occasionally seemed like he was trying to make me feel a little sorry for her, I just felt annoyed. All the same, the plot was good, the characters were good, even if they weren't to my taste, and I enjoyed it. Cibola Burn is on hold already, but it's estimating 4 weeks, and April is stuffed, so we'll see what happens. That's all the books I read in March. If you liked this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!